Welcome to The Business Behind Your Business, the podcast where we delve into the financial strategies and insights that drive success for small and medium-sized business owners. I'm your host, Paul Sweeney, and in each episode we bring you expert guests who share practical advice, real-world experiences, and actionable tips to empower you on your business journey. Whether you're a seasoned entrepreneur or just starting out, get ready to uncover the secrets to success and gain valuable insights into the business behind your business. Welcome back to The Business Behind Your Business. I'm your host, Paul Sweeney. And look, we are bombarded with so many messages these days, so much content, so many things out there, so many things trying to grab our attention. But what makes one of those messages memorable? What stands out to you? When you are seeing so much, you're engaging with so much, what are the things that stand out to you? And it's those different things, but it's often the things that are done with some emotion, some human attachment, some genuine personality attached to that gift or that message that's out there. And look, as I was sort of preparing for our episode today with our guest, I was thinking back to an experience my children have had when they were much younger through a workshop called Build a Bear, where they actually go and make their own bear. But one of the great things about it was they got to record their own voice and include that voice in the bear. And they took great delight in replaying the message that they'd recorded to themselves in their funny voices. And as over time, they continued to think about that memory that they had, and it stood out. And there was a lot of connection there. I'm delighted today because joining us on the podcast is the founder and CEO of the company that brought that to life, created a great experience for my family, working with the Build a Bear workshop. But today we're privileged to have Geoffrey Stern, who's the CEO of VoiceXpress Corp and the founder of a very much beloved brand, VoiceGift. Over 70 million voice recorders have been sold through retailers like Build a Bear. But we're also going to learn a bit more about how the next development of that product, or I guess that experience, has come about, and more importantly, why that's come about and why it makes such a difference in our messaging. So Geoffrey spent decades helping us connect through sound, through voice recordable gift tags, and we're going to learn about the newest release, or the latest version of that, which is VoiceGift, a little palm-sized device to help you stick a voice message on just about anything. And we're going to learn about why that's going to make a big impact on the way that you deliver your messaging. So, yeah, Geoffrey's work's all about turning those moments into memories, like what I've just shared, but also more important memories for you. And look, like a lot of businesses, started small. So started in his father's ribbon business and has grown into a major movement, making gifts more personal and every message more meaningful. So, Geoffrey, welcome to The Business Behind Your Business.
Paul, thank you so much for having me. I love that story about your kids, because what it kind of shows is your kids had a vicarious thrill. You know, you'd think they were just doing something very neutral and transactional. You take a device, you record a message into it, you put it in the teddy bear, and either it's yours or you give it to somebody else, but you're done. But the truth is that small little transaction is just so full of emotion that years later, when the kid or you will pick up that teddy bear and squeeze it, it's going to trigger the emotions of the moment, so forth and so on. So when you ask me what I wanted to discuss today, it's really about emotional engagement. And I think that many of us in a business, and we can provide any type of product, goods, or service. I'm going to argue today that it might be the most pedestrian good or service. But I'm going to argue that what I've learned in my career being involved with voice is that the truth is that behind every transaction, between every service, if it's done successfully, there is that emotional content, and there is, in a sense, a vicarious thrill. Now, if you're selling nuts and bolts, that's going to be a hard case to make, but I'm going to try to make it, today. Talking about my background, you're correct. I started VoiceXpress 20 years ago as a B2B. We were the sound, the voice behind other brands. And I met Maxine Clark, who was starting a company called Build-A-Bear when she had 3 stores. And now they do $500 million in sales a year, 400 plus stores around the world in including Australia. What she did by calling it a workshop is she created something. It's called retailtainment. And what she was getting at is if you're going to be in retail, you have to engage somebody. You have to entertain them. It has to be immersive. And again, I think that if you get into what business she is in and what I ultimately came to, whether it's gifting, whether it's memory making, whether it's crafting, those types of product spaces wear emotion on their sleeves. But I think the message can be extracted to pretty much anything that we can do. You know, there's a time-honored, culturally generic expression when it comes to gifts. It's not the gift. It's not the value of the gift. It's not the cost of the gift. It's the thought behind the gift that matters. And they have done sociological studies looking back at barter, at commerce. And what they realize is when you exchange goods and services, if you're doing it well, there's a reciprocal relationship that you're creating. And I think it's obvious with gifts. And I think that vicarious thrill that your kid had is something that becomes like a showcase for that, where when you give something, why are you smiling? The person who receives it should be smiling. But if it's done properly, there is this kind of reciprocal feedback cycle. And I think that is what I mean by emotional engagement, that no matter what we do, there is this engagement that goes beyond and above the transactional value. And I think if we do think of that as a paradigm shift in no matter what business we're involved with, whether we're starting a business, whether we're managing a business, whether we're taking over an existing business, if we can ask ourselves, what is being exchanged here beyond the goods and the services? If we focus on that, we can improve immeasurably the impact, the power, and at the end of the day, the growth and profitability of our business.
Yeah, so much in there to unpack. Like, it's such a powerful message. And as I mentioned at the beginning, we're bombarded with so many messages that there's nothing behind them. They're very, well, the automatic AI is generating so much, I guess, noise out there, but the messages that really come through, the ones that we pay attention to, are the ones that are genuine, that have that emotional attachment. And yeah, I guess a lot of business owners are probably thinking, well, hang on, we've described the experience of Build-A-Bear, we've described the experience of leaving that voice message, but how do we actually use that kind of, I guess, approach to create a better experience with say, our customers, and who are our customers?
Well, you know, let me be kind of personal about it and talk about what my evolution was. And because I was simply a supplier to Build-A-Bear, I had a box seat to watch their growth and their success. Initially, I thought I was just providing a little disc that would go inside of the teddy bear, animate it, and give it sound. And it would be another SKU amongst, you know, the 50-odd, 60-odd SKUs that they have. They sell sunglasses for teddy bears. They sell little sneakers for teddy bears. And they gradually started moving into licensing movies. And in those days, going back 10, 15 years, now we're all digital. We ship them blank devices, and we have a technology where they can program it on demand at a kiosk in the store. But in the early days, if they were doing a licensing agreement with a Disney movie, we would have to ship them 60, 80, 100,000 of these devices pre-programmed with that audio. And one time we had a shipment, and the foam was of a slightly different density in terms of the pressure needed to trigger that message. So technologically, the thing worked, but functionally for their kids, it didn't work. So we had to pivot, and I had to decide, am I going to keep this customer or not? And what we did is for 2 weeks, our factory produced the product correctly. And every day we shipped to 500 stores, 24 in a box by FedEx. I had I'm sure, the largest bill from FedEx ever. But that's talking about an emotional engagement with your customer that we all need to have too. But what I'm getting at is I realized how important my sound was. Isn't it a wonderful thing when you come to realize how important your product is? It was unfortunate that I had to realize that in a crisis where they said, are you kidding me? We need this sound for the launch and the movie is premiering in 2 weeks. And you get that kind of hit between your head and you say to yourself, my product is not just another SKU. My product, voice, sound, the trigger of that extra sense is driving sales. And once I came to that realization, I also realized, and it really hit me during COVID, when we started getting calls from assisted living facilities where elderly people were saying, I want to hear the sound of my grandchild's voice, and vice versa. So I said to my daughter, who was just winding down a direct-to-consumer business in the ski space, but understood what direct-to-consumer was, and I said, why are we just supplying one retailer, Build-A-Bear with Plush, when we could make a product that could make every picture frame talk, where we could create ring boxes that not only have an LED, but deliver your proposal or your vows. And what we've done in the 5 years since is, because we are a new brand from a very old company, 20 years nowadays is an old company, what we've done is we've tried to look at every part of a consumer's life and every milestone and make sure that there's a way that we can provide a product that can duplicate that experience, which is to add that extra emotive and emotional voice to it. The tagline that we've come up with is what life sounds like. And I really think that gives homage to Sony and the Walkman. Maybe you and I remember what that is.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
But the idea of being able to walk around with headphones on and hear music, and what their tag was, the soundtrack of your life. So what I learned from that kernel of an experience with Build-A-Bear is to extrapolate and to then look at the rest of people's life and the tactile products that they come in contact with and see how we can use the same technology, but more than a technology, the same philosophy and approach to help people really enrich their lives. And that's basically what I learned from. It was the school of hard knocks, not anything that I learned in college or grade school.
Mm. Look, there's a couple of key things that really come out of that story, which is absolutely fabulous, and I'm sort of tingling a bit listening to it. So one of the things I picked up on there is that originally you thought you were just supplying another inventory item to your customer, and I sense that there was a moment where your perception of what you were doing changed from we are just supplying discs that they can record on as part of their inventory to we are supplying a key component of the experience for their customer. And that's really changed the way that you approached, what you were doing with delivering that product. You actually saw beyond just supplying a product to we're helping supply a great experience and something memorable. Would that be fair?
Yeah, I think it's fair, and not to use my company and my experience as a model, but let's face it, if you're in the car rental business and you don't realize that you're not just supplying cars, you're supplying vacations, you're enabling people to meet face to face. Everything that we do is more than it appears. And that's a fact, but where we take that and transition from there to success is when we embrace it and when we acknowledge it, and that enables us to emphasize it. And I think that's really the takeaway that I had and continue to have. I mean, I must say the most, rewarding part of my job is every so often I'll go onto the chat of our website where customers who are using the product have questions. And I guess I'm just like a little kid. I love to know that there are actual customers who are holding the product that I developed and using it. And then once in a while, it's not just putting a smile on a kid's face or even bringing people together. We are right now shipping product to an amazing group of high school kids who are engaged in a program of using one of our sound devices for premature children who are in the neonatal emergency room. And the parents take our device, they sing a lullaby, and they put it in this heart that the kids sew together, put it in the crib. And the nurse, every time she feeds that baby, she presses it, and the kid hears the sound and the smell because they keep these little hearts next to the body of the parent for a few weeks. And that's the obvious output. But the not so obvious is that the mothers and fathers who couldn't leave the side of their child's bed looking through that glass window now feel better about going down to the cafeteria and getting a drink. It affects both of them. So I feel very privileged, but I will argue, and because this is your podcast goes to the broadest sense of people who are selling products and services, that if we look at our products, we can find not only aspects of them that can be used in unimaginable or unforeseeable ways, which is a real delight, but also touch people in ways that we never imagined. And I think if you keep your eyes and ears open to that, that also will drive success. And I would venture to say to keep us engaged in what we do. It never gets stale, I think, if you look at it from that perspective.
Mm. I guess we're talking a lot more about what's the purpose behind what we're doing. So, going back to the situation where you were supplying just a SKU, another inventory item, to now you're supplying, I guess, opportunities and experience for so many different people. And you've taken it from not just supplying a product that goes into a bear for a child, but you've also looked at, well, what are the other applications? So as you mentioned in COVID, the grandparents in the nursing in the aged facilities or the nursing home not being able to hear the grandchildren's voice, the situation with the premature babies that you've just described. I think if we change the way that we look at the product or the service we're delivering, and actually try and understand from that, I guess, that human emotional point of view, what's the experience or what's the need of our end customer, really changes the way we approach what we do.
I really think you're right, but I would go even a step further. I think it also impacts how we relate to our fellow employees, to our vendors, to contractors. I mean, I think if you understand and you try to create a environment and a kind of a DNA along these lines, then every employee, no matter if they're bean counting or if they're working in sales, if they can also have that vicarious thrill of knowing that what they're involved in is giving more than just a service and more than just a mundane product, it impacts their relationship with each other and with the company. Vendors, the same thing. My company it's a distributed network. I don't have a lot of employees, but I do have subcontractors that I've dealt with for 20 years. They're like family. Even if it's something as silly, or I wouldn't say silly, but as trivial as paying your bills on time, or God forbid, paying them early. You know you're going to pay the bill. And of course, my bookkeeper will be screaming at me, what about cash flow? But there has to be a happy balance between cash flow and knowing that when you call up that contractor, he answers your call first because you're the only one who pays the bill pretty close to when you receive it and not when it's due. All of this makes a difference. And, I get back to, I guess, Warren Buffett from Berkshire Hathaway was asked why he bought shares in Coca-Cola. And he says, because I looked at the financial statement and their assets, and I said, and where is the asset, the Coca-Cola brand? And they go, well, that's not something that we depreciate. That's not something on the balance sheet. And so he knew they were undervalued because their biggest asset, their brand equity, wasn't on the balance sheet. And my argument is that all of these things that we've been talking about tonight, whether internally in the company or in terms of the product or service that you provide, that's where the real value is.
Yeah, no, that's great wisdom there, because I think we so often we think about our value is limited to the financial transactions, the balance sheet, the profit and loss, or the physical, tangible assets, but we ignore, and I guess one way of describing it is the goodwill, but I think we're really talking here about the emotional attachment and the value that people perceive in the experience that we've enabled them to have as a result of delivering a great product. And look, I think the other thing that I really enjoy about your story here is you've taken that one product, you've gone from that business to business environment, but you've looked for ways to, I guess, enlarge the opportunity for people to have that same experience in their individually through developing a consumer brand, which is the VoiceGift Play. And do you want to just explain a little bit more about how that works?
Okay, I don't know if I'm allowed to do this on your show, but here's the product. This is VoiceGift Play. And there are those of you who might remember before you went to a museum and they told you to download the museum app, and then you went to each painting and there might be a number underneath it, and you would put in that number and you could hear the curator talk. There were these things called acoustic guides, and they look very similar to this. My concept in launching this was almost to create acoustic guide for our lives. So if you rent an Airbnb and before you leave, you put a number next to the furnace or the pool heater or the washer and dryer, and you say, it's a little different. You got to close the door just so, and you've got to move it just so. You can put a little stick it with a number on. This has a keypad on it. You can enter 999 different memos. You can attach this to a photo book and have grandma, when she comes for the holidays, sit down and explain what was she thinking when she was laughing hilariously in this photo, or dad to describe the feeling he had when he played that touchdown pass. There are so many things in our lives that we can do. And this, to me, was like a eureka moment. And then what I said is, well, what about like kids' books? So for kids, we designed a play slightly differently. It has 12 buttons and icons on each one. And you've all seen these little kids' books that have this plastic kind of thing on the side, and you get to hear pre-recorded sounds. But what I was thinking is, getting back to those assisted living and people being far apart, what happens if grandma can read her favorite story, Goodnight Moon, to all of her grandchildren, even when she's not there? What happens if dad, when he's on a business trip, knows that the kid can look at a sticker on each of his 12 books and push the button and hear dad read to them? Think of what that does for reading skills. We all know the more words you hear, what that does to the brain and development. So those are two products that we've just launched now. And I think my next product, I don't want to give anything away, but I had an elderly man call me and he says, I need a product so when I'm at the foot of the staircase, I can record for myself. So when I get to the top of the staircase, I know why I went there. So these are the most obvious ideas that people give you, but it's called listening. And it's called just, not all of us can invent something out of nowhere, but it's looking at experiences that we've had and extrapolating. And it definitely keeps me young and keeps a bounce in my step. And I must say that all of our vendors and employees, we're just having fun. And the best fun is when we see our products in the hands of our consumers.
Oh, fantastic. Look, we've heard some messages recently a lot about how people are looking more for purpose in what they do in terms of the I guess the businesses that they're choosing to start, the businesses they're choosing to work for. And we're particularly hearing that the next generation, so Gen Z, Gen Alpha, are actually looking to be attached to organizations, businesses, whatever the kind of organization that actually has a purpose beyond the profit. And I think you have very, very clearly shown that what you're not selling a gadget, you're selling an experience, you're selling something extremely important, because I know that, just being able to hear the voice of the grandparent, hear the voice of your grandson, you cannot put a price on that. And you've created a wonderful experience and enabled many, many people to be able to have that experience. And that is just an amazing thing, and really excited to hear you. And look, if you're listening to this, what you're missing is the huge smile that's been on Geoffrey's face as he's just been, sharing, and the delight of what he's learned, how he's engaged, and just the recapping, I guess, some of the joyful encounters from hearing from his customers on his website, what they're getting out of his product, and taking some of their frustrations and saying, right, how can we make this better? I love the example of the man that wants to know why he went to the top of the stairs, because I think a lot of us encounter that regularly. So I think there's definitely a market for that. So look, it's been a pleasure, absolute pleasure. If you want to find out more about VoiceGift, then the website is
Voice.gift. You don't have to put a .com in. It's www.voice.gift. And that's our consumer website. We're also on Amazon. And then in terms of the B2B, it's still there. It's voice-express.com. And there you can see some case studies in what we've done a lot of stuff in the pharmaceutical industry. We've recently done something for Sniff, which is a new perfume company that had their founder actually record a minute, I would say meditation, but actually just a description of the scent before you open that bottle. And how magical is that when brands look at their product the same way I'm looking at gifting, to create the moment, to create the intentionality. I call it that magical moment of unboxing.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Look, I think in so much of a world today where we're being bombarded with AI being the future and it's all tech and high tech, what we are hearing is the key to really being a successful, not just a business, but a successful business with purpose that matters, is that emotional engagement, that real human story behind it. And yes, I'm going to go back to the Build-A-Bear workshops because I still keep thinking the memories that my kids have had with that. What an amazing experience, what an amazing product, amazing people. And Geoffrey, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on the Business Behind Your Business podcast. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. And I've just, thinking so much of how we can transform the way that we go about our business, go about our daily transactions by thinking more about the emotional engagement and experience that other people can receive as a result of what we do. So thank you again. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Paul, thanks for having me. It's been mutual.
That's great. Thanks, Geoffrey.
Thanks so much.
That's a wrap for this episode of The Business Behind Your Business. We hope you found today's discussion insightful and valuable for your business journey. Before we go, don't forget to subscribe to our podcast on your favorite platform. Share it with fellow business owners who could benefit, and send in your burning questions because we love hearing from you. Missed any of our previous episodes or looking for additional resources to help grow your business? Head over to our website at thebusinessbehindyourbusiness.com. There you'll find our full archive of past episodes, along with show notes, transcripts, and links to valuable resources mentioned in each episode. Your journey to business success continues at thebusinessbehindyourbusiness.com. Until next time, stay inspired, stay informed, and keep building the business of your dreams.